These are the Red Hare 8 Pro from Li-Ning, which is the brand's premier advanced trainer, or 进阶训练鞋, to use the exact phrase I found on their marketing material. It's essentially the non-plated, performance-oriented training companion to the brand's racing-focused Feidian lineup. I currently have just over 190 kilometers in my pair, which I have in this disgusting orange colorway, mostly using them for longer, steady runs at a moderate pace. But I have also taken them for a couple of tempo threshold runs and a single speed training session. My pair weigh 260 grams in an EU size 45, making them decently light for a training shoe, if not exceptionally so. As I'll go into later though, for me, these shoes have quickly become more of a dedicated long-run daily trainer type of shoe. And in that category, and with the stack they have, that's pretty darn light. On the subject of stack, these are Li-Ning shoes, so I have basically no information about them. But they're definitely not max stack, they're definitely not low stack, and I'd guess they're probably low to mid 30s in the sample size. But until I decide to get some sort of a measuring device, I guess we'll never know. The upper is a thin, light, fairly close-knit mesh comprised of Li-Ning's boom fiber material. I believe every Li-Ning shoe I've ever looked at is listed as having a boom fiber upper, so that's not particularly special. And at least in the Red Hare 8 Pro and the Feidian Challenger, it's a fairly flexible, plasticky, synthetic material that molds well to the foot and provides a snug, performance-oriented fit. There's a bit of light padding around the heel collar and a lightly padded tongue. What I find interesting about this tongue is how big and wide it is at the top. It's certainly a lot bigger and sticks out more than your average running shoe tongue, although that doesn't really have any significant impact. Oh, and the tongue is not gusseted, if that makes any difference to you, and the laces are fairly standard. The last thing to mention is this TPU clip that runs along the back half of the shoe on both sides and rises up towards the heel counter on the lateral side. This is some sort of stability element that's here to provide more support, and I was a little worried that it might feel intrusive when running, but so far I honestly haven't even noticed it once. The outsole is a pretty comprehensive covering of Li-Ning's GCR material, which I believe is actually rubber, unlike the polyurethane-based GCU outsole units that appear on some other Li-Ning shoes. Based on my experiences so far, I generally prefer having rubber outsoles. The plasticky PCU outsoles can feel a little bit scratchy sometimes, whereas rubber just tends to blend into the ride and go unnoticed. Unless we're talking about the Deviate Nitro 2. I haven't experienced any sort of grip issues in this, although I should say that I don't think I've taken it out in the rain yet. I certainly haven't taken it out in any sort of heavy rain, as since getting a treadmill, that's not really something I've been forced to do. In terms of durability, I'd say there is very little wear after almost 200 kilometers, and I don't see this wearing out before I get my designated 800 kilometers. In terms of the midsole, like blah blah blah, what is boom? We've been through this before. What I will say is that the more I run in the Feidian 4C, the more inclined I am to think that that is actually PIBA. But as I've said before, I really don't know for sure. What I am pretty certain of is that the material in this shoe is essentially exactly the same material as is in the midsole of that shoe. It is the same boom that is in the Feidian Challenger, although based on a little bit of prodding and poking and obviously running, I feel like this formulation might be a tiny bit softer than the formulation in those, although there really is not much in it. Whatever, chemically speaking, it turns out to be, it is a really nice material that offers a soft, forgiving ride with a pleasant amount of bounce. A big difference between this and the Feidian lineup is the lack of a plate in the Red Hare 8 Pro. It does have this plastic stability element in the midsole, which I think works a bit like the shank you used to get through the midfoot of the Asics Nimbus line. It's something that's included to provide a bit of extra torsional stability rather than something to stiffen the midsole or give any sort of propulsive benefit. Apologies for moving around in the shadow. They're building stuff out there and there's a big screen that keeps wafting in front of the doors. Anyway, back to this non-plate Just like the TPU clip on the upper, I honestly don't feel this when running. It may well do something, but it doesn't do it in a way that is directly noticeable or feels intrusive. So even if you're somebody like me who doesn't feel like you need any added stability elements, I really don't think its presence in this shoe is anything to worry about. The shoe offers a well-cushioned, somewhat springy ride. This is a performance midsole foam, and so it feels like it gives you a decent amount of energy return without feeling aggressively propulsive. The lack of a carbon plate leads to a softer, more forgiving ride than the Feidian Challenger, but also means it lacks a lot of that pop at top-end speeds. I wouldn't say it's a particularly soft foam, but then neither is it firm. It's very much a happy medium that sort of sits right in the middle and lends the shoe some decent versatility, making it work particularly well as a multi-purpose daily trainer. When I took this shoe out for a speed session straight out of the box, I was a little bit underwhelmed by its performance at higher end paces, by which I mean sort of 5K pace or like all out 20-minute pace and maybe a little bit faster. It feels a lot more comfortable at threshold pace and slower, and I think the sweet spot in this shoe for me is around about marathon tempo. I originally bought this with the intention that it would become my dedicated threshold training shoe, but after just a couple of runs in it, I knew it was going to be my long run shoe going forward. For me, it just has that Nova Blast 1 vibe, a not soft, not firm, consistent, reliable ride that feels the same after 20 kilometers as it does in the first kilometer, and offers a nice bit of bounce while pushing you forwards, but not in a way that makes you want to run super fast. I think this is a great shoe from threshold paces down to those zone 2 steady or easier runs, although I wouldn't necessarily use it for slow plodding. I don't think it feels crazy unnatural or uncomfortable at those paces. Again, much like the Nova Blast 1. But for me, it is so hard to find a good long run shoe that I click with, that the moment I realized that this was going to work for me in that role, I just haven't really considered doing anything else in it. So the first comparison I'll make, I guess, is the obvious one to the Feidian Challenger. I am planning to do a more in-depth, shortish video comparing these two shoes and looking into which one I would buy. Spoiler, it's both. So I'll try to keep this one short. While they do use the same midsole foam and they are both comparatively light, I honestly don't feel like they're that similar in terms of how you would use them and in terms of how the ride feels. The Challenger definitely excels at faster paces, while the Red Hare feels better at chonking out those longer, steadier efforts. The Red Hare 8 Pro is softer and more forgiving and probably offers a little bit more comfort in the upper, while also feeling a fair bit more stable. The second comparison is to the Nova Blast 1, but definitely not the Nova Blast 3. The ride isn't quite the same, but there are a lot of the same elements there. And I think the strengths and use cases of these two shoes have a lot of overlap. I think someone who really enjoyed the Nova Blast 1 as a daily trainer would also really enjoy this shoe, even if it's not quite as magical and bouncy feeling. I just have to hope that Li-Ning don't do to this shoe what Asics did to that one. So in conclusion, this is a great long run shoe and daily trainer for churning out steady miles. I don't personally think it has the oomph to be a particularly good speed shoe or racing option, and you can look at the Feidian lineup if that's what you're after, but it is a decent threshold option and it will absolutely eat the miles at marathon pace or slower. For the price, this has to be one of the best daily trainers I've ever owned, especially if you're looking for something with more versatility, lighter weight, and the ability to pick up the pace in a world where everything seems to be getting softer and chunkier. As always, I hope that was vaguely informative, and if there's anything I didn't cover, please feel free to drop a comment down below. If you have this shoe and you have anything to add, even or especially if you think I'm talking out of my ass, again, please do feel free to comment down below. It always helps to get different perspectives and as many opinions as possible, and as always, I hope to see you next time out.